Multiple sources are telling CNN that a highly anticipated report from the Pentagon's watchdog finds that the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth could have put U.S. troops in danger by using an app to share highly sensitive military attack plans. A classified report on what has been informally dubbed Signalgate is now in the hands of Congress tonight. The unclassified version of that report is expected to be publicly released tomorrow. And it comes as the already embattled secretary finds himself embroiled in another widening investigation tonight. That one is into the U.S. airstrike in the Caribbean that killed survivors who did not die in the initial strike on an alleged drug boat, but instead as the result of a second one on the wrecked ship that they were clinging to. Members of both parties here in D.C. tonight have said that that strike could constitute a war crime. It's a serious allegation, and both of these events tonight have amplified concerns about the secretary himself, even from some prominent Republicans on Capitol Hill. On the signal front, you may remember it was a huge story when someone on a group chat of top government officials mistakenly added a reporter as they were talking about an imminent U.S. attack in Yemen. The secretary responded tonight by posting, quote, "No classified information, total exoneration, case closed." But Secretary Hegseth's messages included material from documents that were marked classified at the time. And while he has the power to declassify information, of course, we have not seen evidence that he did. The secretary's real-time tracking on the Yemen mission, however, offers a pretty stark contrast to what happened with the boat strike that happened months later. Secretary Hegseth says that he stopped watching the live feed before that second strike was ordered to kill survivors. And when President Trump was asked today if he believes that anyone should be punished for targeting survivors, this is what he said from the Oval Office.
If it is found that survivors were actually killed while clinging onto that boat, should Secretary Hegseth, Admiral Bradley, or others be punished?
I think you're going to find that this is war, that these people were killing our people.
That was the president's answer. We wait to see what Admiral Bradley has to say because he's got a slew of meetings on Capitol Hill with leaders from both parties about what exactly went down. You can expect Congress to push for messages that were exchanged before that strike happened. What were the directives? What happened during the strike? And of course, what came after, along with the full video and audio of those strikes. The president today, when he was asked by reporters if he supports the release of the second strike, so everyone can see what that looks like, said yes.
Release video of that first boat strike on September 2nd, but not the second video. Will you release video of that strike so that the American people can see for themselves what happened?
I don't know what they have, but whatever they have, we'd certainly release, no problem. You know, we stopped every boat we knock out, we save 25,000 American lives.
And I'm joined now by Republican Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina. And thank you, Senator, for being here. Welcome to The Source.
Thank you.
When it comes to this Inspector General's report, the conclusion is that, in part, that Secretary Hegseth did put American forces at risk by sharing this information in a Signal group chat. Do you agree with that conclusion?
I agree. Anytime you release mission set information before the strike, you run that risk. And thank goodness that we did not tarnish one of the most extraordinary precision strikes in recent history, because it could have been that way. And so, yeah, you got to be tight on that sort of information. That's a force protection issue. It's a mission critical piece of information that could have been used by our adversaries to blow those planes out of the sky. You just don't do that.
Secretary Hegseth is framing it as total exoneration. Is that how you view this report that came out today?
No, I think at some point, just take the learning experience and move on. No one can rationalize that as an exoneration. We know that mission information was outside of the classified setting that it was trusted to be in. And, Kaitlan, I don't even bring a pen into a classified briefing. We obviously don't have our phones, we don't have our watches. I don't even bring a pen in to make notes, to remove any doubt that there is something that I could have dropped or put in the trash can that I forgot about, because that's how seriously you need to take classified information. Thank God nothing bad happened. Thank God the great decision that the president made to make that strike was successful, but it could have put it at risk. And why would you send the signal that maybe this is okay? Maybe you could be exonerated by leaking information before a critical mission. Just let's move past it.
Well, and you mentioned classified briefings. There's about to be a few on Capitol Hill tomorrow over these alleged boat strikes and the fact that 2 survivors were clinging to a boat after one strike, and then a second strike was carried out. You said whoever ordered the second strike on the survivors needs to get the hell out of Washington.
Yeah, I stand by that.
Is the way you put it?
Yeah.
Pete Hegseth says that was Admiral Frank Bradley.
We need to get to the bottom of it. You know, I have observed in Iraq several years ago. I was in Erbil outside of Mosul, and I have observed a kinetic strike, and I know the process that you go through and the number of people that may be watching and the legal procedure that you should go through to make sure that you have the authority to do what you're doing is within legal bounds. Hopefully, we'll have a transcript of that information. We'll review it, and then we'll get to the facts. But at the end of the day, anyone who knowingly took on a disabled vessel, you learn that the responsibility a boater has, if you're a recreational boater, to actually come to the aid of a distressed vehicle, a vessel, if it doesn't pose a threat to you. Minimally, you should have at least followed through by trying to get assets there to apprehend them. If someone knowingly launched a second missile at that boat, which led to the deaths of the other 2, then they have to be held accountable, and they shouldn't be in whatever role they're in.
They've been putting the onus of this on the Admiral here. Do you believe that it is on him, or do you think it's on Secretary
I'll take
Hegseth?
at face value right now what Secretary Hegseth said. He said he wasn't there. He said he was busy doing other things. I would assume a part of the record was what was the other thing that he was doing that was more important than a battle damage assessment over the first strike in the Caribbean.
So you want to know where he went when he left that room?
Yeah, I mean, all that's important because, see, Secretary Hegseth is the leader of arguably the most complex, consequential organization in the history of mankind. Making a bad mistake could start a war. Making a mistake can get American military personnel killed. You've got to be tight on your execution, and you need to be tight on documenting every decision that could be subject to a question about whether or not the law of war and the law of the sea were followed. It's a legitimate question. It's not, for me, it's not this is an operational question.
So when he says it's the fog of war and that he didn't personally see the survivors because the boat was on fire, is that a reasonable explanation
I would not necessarily have expected, if you've seen these actually happen, I would not necessarily have expected the Secretary Hegseth to have seen it or noticed it. A lot of these videos can be grainy. I mean, you're in the middle of the smoke clearing. It's happening very quickly. I don't know what the timing was between the 2 strikes. So there was time compression as well. So I could see where maybe he did not see it, but he is the Secretary of Defense. And he is responsible for the integrity of that organization and the processes that are in place for these sorts of strikes all over the world. I mean, you get on these phone calls before they ultimately make the decision to pull the trigger. You typically have lawyers on the call. You have people reviewing every element to make sure that this is an operation that you can do that fully adheres to the law of war. Here's why this is so important. Our men and women get in situations where they may be blown out of the water. And we're putting our forces at risk if we're setting or lowering the bar for actually honoring the rules of engagement.
And you're saying the buck stops with Secretary Hegseth?
The buck has to stop at least. I want to know what the processes were in place so that we can get it. There should be no reason why we don't have a definitive answer on precisely what information was used and precisely who ordered the hit. This should be, and if it's not, then we need to add additional requirements to make sure that this stuff is captured for posterity.
And the president said today he supports releasing the video of that second strike.
And I appreciate the president doing that.
Because you expect Congress to get that, right?
100%.
Back in July, you told my colleague Jake Tapper that you thought Secretary Hegseth was out of his depth at the Pentagon. Is that still your view today?
Yeah, and the reason I mean that is Secretary Hegseth went through the confirmation process. I ultimately voted for him. He was unanimously voted out of committee, and I deferred to them, having been on Senate Armed Services for 8 years, to gauge whether or not they thought he had the right skill set to lead this large, complex, consequential organization. Some of these things, to me, I don't think there's any malice or ill intent on the part of Secretary Hegseth. It speaks to a level of executive experience where you would just assume these controls, these protocols would be in place. So you're protecting your organization. The absence of information exposes your organization to suspicion and to criticism that you avoid by having the answers to all the questions when you need them, when you're making these complex, very difficult decisions. And incidentally, I'm not against everything Secretary Hegseth has done. I'm making a professional judgment, as I made for the majority of my career, about whether or not executives are in the right place to bring the organization to the level of performance that the United States of America should expect for any cabinet member.
Do you think he's doing a good job as the defense secretary?
You know, I think he's got a mixed report card. Some of these things just simply have to do with execution. We've got to be tight. We are an exceptional nation that does exceptional good in the world. Our reputation matters, and the bar that we set, you can argue, is going to be the top level of expectation for our peers and for our allies and our adversaries. I don't want to lower the bar on execution. I want to raise it.
Would you vote yes on him again today?
I don't answer hypothetical. You're talking about based on, well, see, it's a hypothetical question I'm not going to answer because I had to judge based on his resume at the time. I'm having a discussion right now telling you that I've got a real problem with some of these decisions. Again, not malintent. It's about being tight on execution. This president deserves people who are concerned with his legacy. At the end of the day, people may forget who Pete Hegseth is. People will not forget who Donald Trump is. And when they make decisions that are below the standards that I think President Trump wants, I'm going to hold him accountable because I care about his legacy.
So you think maybe this is a sign that they're not thinking, that Pete Hegseth is not thinking of Donald Trump's legacy?
People need to think about the long term. This president will be remembered long after you and I are gone. I'm sorry to say that. But we are all responsible for making sure this president's good decisions, his decision in Iran, the way that he's holding people accountable for unfair trade relationships, these are things that he should be remembered by. We're not even talking about the Iran strike anymore. We're talking about what may have been a misstep in the Caribbean. That's not what I want for this president's legacy.
The president ran on America First. As you know, a lot of people in your home state supported that. And I wonder if the boat strikes in the Caribbean and the president saying today that there will be land strikes, does that align with the America First that people wanted, in your view?
I think we need to be really careful, Kaitlan, because then we wade into the political consequences for getting out over our skis. So I want to make sure that the president is being advised on the pros and cons of any incursion into Venezuela, the risk. You know, there will be American soldiers and American service personnel potentially at risk, either on land or in a. You know, once you launch a strike like that, then you've got to be concerned with the consequences, not only in Venezuela, but in the United States, on the border, and in Latin South America, where we have special operators working every day. So you got to be tight on this execution, or you could be putting forces at risk, and nobody wants that. And I certainly know that that Secretary Hegseth doesn't want it. But let's think this through and make sure we execute tight.
Well, and in response to what they're doing with the drug boats and going after Maduro and the pressure campaign, the White House says that's because he's smuggling drugs and funneling them to the United States.
Yeah.
You were critical of his decision to pardon a former leader of Honduras who was convicted on that very matter last week. You said that it basically ran counter to that goal of theirs. Tonight, he's also just pardoned a Texas Democrat, Henry Cuellar, who had been indicted on basically bribery charges alongside his wife, taking bribes from 2 foreign entities. Do you support that pardon?
Well, I want to know who is responsible for making the pardon recommendations, what they're thinking. Again, the president is not going to review the pardon applications and go through all the details. He's going to take a recommendation from his staff. Many of the things that I think are going on in this administration that I have a problem with are not with the president. They're the advice that the president's being given. How on earth can you threaten a potential land war against a thug and a narco-terrorist who plays like he's the president of Venezuela, and then go easy on someone whose investigation that led to an indictment started in the Trump administration? So
By
these
his
are-
own former personal attorney.
These are the basics that concern me with the advice coming out of the pardons office, like the January 6 protesters who killed or were responsible for the death of people on Capitol Hill. Look, I get the over prosecution. There were a lot of people who went to prison. Biden he over prosecuted. It was vindictive prosecution. It was wrong. Should they have been fined? Should they have been given an education? Yes. But there were hundreds of people that should not have gone to jail or gone to all the expense that they did. But these thugs, these people that breached the building, told everybody else to come in, who assaulted police officers, there's no way they should be on the street today. And anybody who made that recommendation to the president needs to be held accountable.
What about with Henry Cuellar, though? I mean, he's a Texas Democrat. The Republicans have been trying to beat for years. They're in a fight for their life over the House right now, their political life. Does that make sense to you to pardon him and make his
Well,
reelection?
on its face, it's don't. But you could do the breaking news banner here because I wasn't aware that one was out as well. I've been following more of the Honduran president, and keep in mind there was a brother convicted too. And I'm trying to figure out if one was a political prosecution, why wasn't the other one? It makes no sense to me.
So on the pardon, I mean, Trump's been pardoning a lot of people. He pardoned someone tonight that his own Justice Department indicted back in July. Does the pardon sense coming out of the White House make sense to you? Pardon strategy,
No,
I guess I
I
should say?
think the pardon recommendations coming out of the DOJ do not make sense to me. Let's keep in mind
Does that mean Ed Martin?
where the pardons office works and the recommendations flowing in that direction. I cannot imagine in some of these cases. In some cases, maybe the president and I could respectfully disagree. But I can't imagine if he had a fulsome explanation of what was going on and how it was going to be perceived by the American public, Republicans and Democrats, that some of these pardons would have actually occurred.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you think he's being misled or not told everything by Ed Martin, his pardon
I don't
attorney.
think he's being misled. I think that maybe, like I said, this is all about execution. It seems like to me people haven't really done their homework to really make sure these pardons could become a part of this president's legacy. I don't want to tarnish the good work the president has done. These sorts of things discount. It's like I said, we're not talking about the Iran strike anymore. We're talking about striking an Iran strike that led to a peace agreement. That was transformational. Nobody would have done that except Donald J. Trump. But now we're not talking about that. We're talking about hitting a boat with 11 people on it and then maybe taking a second shot at 2 who survived in violation of the law of the sea and the law of war. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the extraordinary decision the president made to neutralize Iran and lay the groundwork for a transformational peace agreement in the Middle East. Which of those two sound like they're going to live longer for posterity for this gentleman's legacy?
That's a good question. And you're very candid in your assessments of this White House, of Washington.
I've heard that said before.
Some people may not say that in a good way. You are not running for re-election.
Right.
And in your
we can all be clear. I was candid long before I made that decision.
Yes, you were. Yes, those are not tied. But a Democrat, the former governor of your home state, announced today that he filed his paperwork to run for that seat. Do you think Roy Cooper will be tough for Republicans to beat?
He will be. I mean, Roy Cooper, I don't take any of this stuff personally. So I have friends that I would never vote for and I would campaign against. So I respect Roy Cooper. But for him to tell the people of North Carolina that he's a conservative or left of center liberal, they need to go look at his record. I became Speaker of the House in North Carolina and undid a lot of things that he did as a legislator. We need, and our state motto is esse quam videre, to be rather than to seem. He seems like a moderate, but he's not a moderate based on his words and based on his deeds and the time that I've observed him. A good guy, somebody I'd like to have a friendship with, but this is a political contest, and I believe that Michael Whatley's much better prepared to represent North Carolina than Roy Cooper.
Yeah. And
as
you
a
noted,
conservative.
Your races were always very close.
That's right.
They usually are in North Carolina.
I was always behind by 2 points on election day.
Senator, thank you for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you.
Really appreciate your time. Thom Tillis.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.